The Best Bell Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm Bradley Stalder, and you can follow me on Twitter at FFStalder. Tonight, I will be doing live projections for the Arizona Cardinals. This is going to be the first of many team study halls that I'll be going through and identifying players on each team that may surprise, that may be undervalued, overvalued. These are going to be median projections. So for episode 25 today, I'm going to do uh, projections for the Arizona Cardinals. And I'm going to do them live. I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to look through pass rates, completion percentages, very basic. And I know that we can get all nitty gritty in the details, but we need a baseline to work with. And projections have their own meaning, right? They're their lens through which we can see players. And this is not upside, this is not floor. There are, of course, tons of context and factors, and I will be talking about which ones of those I'm most keen on, or maybe that I have my eye on and I'm including in my projections. And maybe I'm wrong on some things, but this is part of the learning process and part of how my process improves my play as a fantasy football player. So, without further ado, I'm going to begin with sharing my screen. And I have pulled up here the Arizona Cardinals. But before we project any players, we need to at least have some sort of baseline by which we understand these players are going to play. We need a pot. We need a volume from which the players can draw from. So we need to know how many plays they're going to play. So I have set up in my little handy dandy sheet on Google Sheets uh, a cell where I have the total amount of plays that I anticipate throughout the year the team will play. And 65.6 plays per game times 17 games give us about 1,100 plays. And looking at Arizona Cardinals, I'm drawing from last season, 65.6, and that seems to be about right. In 2020, the Arizona Cardinals ran 67.7 plays per game, so it's going to be between 65 and 67, 68 plays per game, and at least this is going to be a conservative median that we can draw from. Over the last 3 games of 2021, Arizona had run 66 plays per game, and that was actually brought down by their final game of the season, where the Cardinals only ran 54 plays in the final game. So keeping all of that in mind, I'm going to use that as the baseline times 17, and that's going to give us about 1,115 total plays that the Arizona Cardinals are going to run in 2022. Now that may be high, it may be low, but at least I have a baseline from which I can draw, and it's not going to be too terribly far off. Okay, and then looking at over the last couple years, Arizona 56.4% pass rate was actually 21st in the NFL last season. Now, the Arizona Cardinals over the last 3 games of the season, their pass rate was actually 60.6%. And last in 2020, though, their pass rate was 55.7. So I know their pass rate is going to probably be season long between about 55 and 56%. So I think it should be pretty safely at about 56%. So I'm going to change that to 56% here. And I'm going to estimate that the total amount of passes that the Cardinals will have over the course of the season, about 624 passes. And therefore, the amount of rushes, about 490. Now, of course, I can look at how many throwaways they're going to have. I'm not going to do that. I assume that those passes are considered incomplete passes and don't count toward the receptions that the players will in particular have. And as I don't know if any of you have done projections before, but this is more of an art and a feel in conjunction with the stats. So you use the data that you have to paint a picture. And maybe it's an uglier picture, maybe it's a more beautiful picture. But in this initial one, I at least have a baseline from which I can draw the amount of passes and the amount of rushes and the team totals that I can expect my players to have. So you can already see that I've kind of filled in some things, but I will completely go through player by player based on what I have. And some other players, like quarterback, is going to be dependent upon some of the efficiency metrics of the wide receivers and vice versa. So looking at here, we're going to start with Kyler Murray. And Kyler Murray last year, 69.2% completion percentage. So I anticipate that it's not going to be a career high, but also looking at his 2020 year, 67% completion percentage. It was higher than his first year. And a rookie year, quarterbacks, they make mistakes, they get picked off. In fact, Kyler Murray's interception rate was a career high in 2019 and 2020. But I anticipate that his completion percentage is going to be closer to 67% than the 69%. So that's what I'm going to draw from for here is a 67%. Now, completion percentage is S32. So I define that as right here. So S32. I need that to be 67%. Okay, so I'm going to mark that as 67% is about the baseline that I expect my wide receivers catch rates to be. Okay, and as I go through it, I'll need to make adjustments based on sample sizes that I think might be off, uh, or players who were injured for part of the season, etc. So I'll be able to take a look at all of that. So 67% is what I want this number at the bottom, this S32, to be by the end, around there. If it's 67.2, if it's 68, if it's 66.7, that's going to be fine. It's just I want it to be close to that number. That needs to be my baseline. Now, the amount of completions is going to be dependent upon the number of pass attempts. Now, looking over the last couple seasons, Kyler Murray, right? He's had 349 completions, 375 completions, 333 completions, but 542 attempts, 558 attempts, 481. If we look at quarterbacks for the Arizona Cardinals, who are not Kyler Murray, uh, looking at the snap percentages, it's pretty low. Just even in 2021, like Colt McCoy got some work, Chris Streveler got some work, but I anticipate that Kyler Murray is going to have a full workload, and by that I mean in the games that Kyler Murray played but didn't play 100% of snaps. He played, uh, looking here, 97% of snaps, 93% of snaps, 90% of snaps, 85% of snaps. So is probably going to be around that 97% of the pass attempts. So I'm going to equal 0.97 times the total number of pass attempts. So 606 pass attempts for Kyler Murray. And then I'll split between Colt McCoy, Trace McSorley, and I'm not going to give any to camp invite Jarrett Guarantano. Okay. So 606 to 624, 625, 19. I'll give like 10 to Colt McCoy and 9 to Trace McSorley. So nothing crazy. And I'll adjust the yards as well, the yards per attempt, etc., that I have in there. But 606 pass attempts, 434. That would be career highs for Kyler Murray for the pass attempts, 606. But also a career high in completions at 437. Now, as I mentioned, the completions and pass attempts, that completion number is dependent upon the completion percentage, and the completion percentage is based upon the catch percentage. So I'm going to look at Obviously, the catch percentage is a little bit higher than I want, so it's going to go down a little bit. The yards are going to go down significantly. Touchdowns, that's not a real touchdown rate, of course. Uh, so I'm going to ignore most of these stats except for the interception rate. And it looks like over the last couple seasons, Kyler Murray's consistently 2.2% interception rate. So I'm going to give him a 0.022 interception rate uh, equals 0.022 times the amount of pass attempts. So I project him for 13 interceptions this coming year. And that would be a career high as well. But given the career high volume, that's not going to be a surprise. It's going to be pretty close to that, especially given his career outages each season 2.2, 2.2, 2.1. Okay. Now we get into the exciting stuff, and that is for Kyler Murray, the rushing. The rushing share is an interesting thing to me because Kyler Murray, let's look in particular at this past season. Kyler Murray's median rush share, because he played 14 games. So the median rush share is between 19 and 23 percent of the rushes for the Arizona Cardinals. So I'm going to pick 21 as the median. So equals 0.21 rush share, 21%. And I automatically have it populated here that the rush share times my K33, which is the number of rushing plays that I expect Kyler Murray to run 103 times. That's going to be pretty good. Looking at his career numbers, Kyler Murray rushed 93 times his rookie year, 133 times his second year, and then last year, he only rushed 88 times, but that was in 14 games. Now we have a 17-game season, so not surprising that it's going to be a little bit higher. But in 2019, Kyler Murray had 4 rushing touchdowns. In 2020, 11 and 5. So 20 career touchdowns in uh, over 314 career rushes. So I'm going to change his touchdown rate to his career average. And we've seen one spike year, we've seen 2 lower years. And that takes into account what we've seen over the course of his career, I think. So equals 20 divided by his 314 career rush attempts times the rush attempts here, projecting for 7 rushing touchdowns. Now, the yards per carry is all over the place, but I'm going to look at the baseline for Kyler. His rookie year was 5.8, his second year, 6.2, last year, 4.8. And I believe that Kyler Murray had some injury issues last year, which hampered his rushing. His career rate is a 5.7, which is higher than last year. And I think that 5.7 would be a fair yards per attempt, given that his rookie year was also 5.8. So I'll put 5.7 there, keep that there. And then um, actually, I'll just make this. Why is that equal to 0? Okay, that is actually a touchdown rate. So 6.37% is a touchdown rate, 7 touchdowns, 587 rush yards, 103 attempts, 13 passing touchdown or 13 interceptions. And the touchdowns are, let me put a 0 here. I don't anticipate any touchdowns for Colt McCoy or Trace McSorley on 10 and 9 pass attempts. But looking over the rest of the way, the touchdown projection is going to be drawn from the receiving touchdowns. So obviously, once I iron that out, we'll be okay. All right. So Kyler Murray is pretty much all set. I'm set with Kyler. Now we can look at Colt McCoy. And with the camp body players like Jarrett Guarantano, I'm not going to dwell very long on them. I'm just going to probably give them straight zeros so we don't have to worry about them. It's the players like Darrel Williams that I'm going to be more interested in or the likes of a DeAndre Hopkins or Marquise Brown that are more exciting, that get us into it. But Colt McCoy does get involved here. And just for kicks and giggles, his rushing career average is 3.4 yards per carry. Uh, yeah, I don't anticipate he'll get much rushing at all. Maybe he'll get a kneel down one, and his uh, touchdown rate will be a 0. So I'm not going to expect Colt McCoy to get very much. Same with Trace McSorley. Trace McSorley, I'm going to give a 1%, a one rush attempt there, 3 yards, not very much. Okay, cool. And Jarrett Guarantano, I'm not going to even bother with. Okay. Let's fast forward to James Conner because that's where things start to get interesting for James Conner. And throughout these projections, if you want to pop in a question about an Arizona Cardinal for this live stream, feel free to. You can type a comment in in the chat on YouTube in particular. Love getting those questions, and maybe we can dig a little bit deeper into it. If you have questions on philosophy of projections or it as one of the ways in which we can view a player, I'd love to chat about it. I've been doing projections for the last couple years, and my running backs have been really accurate over the course of the season. It's the wide receivers that sometimes get a little more difficult to project over the course of the season. But that's why we do it. It allows me to go through this process of just giving a baseline basic projections for players. Okay, so James Conner, we're going to focus on his rush share. This is where things start to get really exciting because James Conner, we have some splits with Conner. His rush share, he is a running back, so I got to change the filter here. His rush share topped out at 63.6% of the rushes. Now, remember, earlier in this projection, Kyler Murray was only at 21%. The median rush share last season for James Conner was 45% of the rushes. Median. Most of his rushes were between 55 and 35% of the rushes. So that once again hits on the 45% of the rushes. Let's put him in for 45% of the rushes and just see what happens. Okay, 45%. That gives James Conner 221 rush attempts. Now, his yards per carry, we're going to look at the yards per carry for James Conner over his career and also in particular last season as well. Those are just giving us some context. As I said, median projections are not about being exactly on. It's about giving a baseline and then using those baselines to either confirm your takes earlier or to prompt you to question, why are my projections different than how I'm perceiving this player? What am I missing? What is the narrative? So as I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, these projections are more so about prompting you to think deeper about players. So looking at last season, James Conner's yards per attempt, 3.7. So much lower. He did have 15 touchdowns. And this is the second time in James Conner's career where he's had double-digit touchdowns. 2018, Conner had 12 rushing scores in 13 games. This past season, Conner had 15 rushing scores in 15 games, but still not a high rushing volume. His career average is 4.2. Do I think it's going to be back at 3.7? Probably not that low, but I don't think it's going to be at the 4.5 where it was during his first two seasons. So it's probably going to be closer to what I have here as 4.2 yards per carry, maybe 4.15, just to dip it down a little bit lower. So that gives James Conner 916 rush yards. If we're projecting him season long, 17 games, which he's never played more than 15 in a season. And if we try to play the injury game, that's a difficult game to play unless you apply it to every player. Now, Mike Clay, he makes the argument that, well, I he should you should project running backs for 15 games instead of 17, or back when we had a 16 game season for 14 games. And he was the one who introduced me to doing projections, and I said, well, that's fair, but you're applying it to pretty much every running back, so why don't we just use the 17 game season and at least, give us a baseline, because I know that running backs are projected for injuries, but I'm not looking to get like the exact number of rushing yards right. I want to better understand, like, if a player misses one game, that matters pretty significantly for their total points in projections. That could bump them down 5, 10 spots. If we try to be the injury predictor of one game or two games difference between players, it's a dangerous thing to do. If if that's your goal, is to be extremely accurate. That's not my goal in this. As I mentioned before, it's to give a baseline and to give an idea comparing to other players in similar scenarios, what is about where we should expect them. So James Conner, his touchdown rate is not 37, of course. But we do have a sample size of 2 seasons where he had massive touchdown rates and 2 seasons where he had nothing. Three of these in Pittsburgh, and then of course his Arizona season. So over 734 rush attempts, he scored 37 touchdowns. So equals 37 divided by 734. Divided by 734. And that is a rate of approximately 5.04%. That would give James Conner a third year of double-digit rushing touchdowns if he plays all 17 games. Now, if he plays 14 games or 13 games or 10 games, that's obviously going to be a lot lower. But this makes sense in the context of what James Conner is going to do for the Arizona Cardinals. He's going to get double-digit touchdowns if he's used like the goal line back. Okay, now that we're all set with James Conner, from the rushing perspective, the target share. Oh, this is a fun little one where the target share, James Conner's median target share was 7% last year. Because he played what, 15 games? No, it was 4.2. Actually, the median was 4.2. But in games where Chase Edmonds did not play, in week 9, week 13, week 10, 11, 18, 14, James Conner had double digit target shares. What are we to do? Like, it's very cut and dry, but Darrel Williams will also play a part in this. So I'm going to have a placeholder of about 8%. I think that's going to be my placeholder for James Conner, because let's look at James Conner previous seasons. Maybe this will give us a better context, because the median in 2021 was 6.9%. So looking back in 2020, his median target share for Pittsburgh, now is a different team, but let's see if there's some pattern that we can notice. His median target share was 8.8%, okay, in 2020. And then in 2019, his breakout season for James Conner, the median target share for Conner, if it decides to load for me, his median target share in 10 games was 11.5%. So it's actually gone down over the last few seasons, which is why I'm more comfortable having Conner at, let's bump it up to 9%, a 9% target share. I don't think it's going to be all the way at the 11%. I don't think it's going to be at 10%, but we're going to hedge a little bit because we saw what Conner could do getting that double-digit target share in the weeks that Chase Edmonds was out. Now, also looking at James Conner's reception percentage, the catch percentage over his career, James Conner has ranged from 77.5% of his season catch percentage all the way to 94.9% last season. And we saw Kyler Murray go up, but if we're expecting Kyler Murray to go down a little bit, we're going to have to bump James Conner down. And I don't think it's going to be 95%. It's going to be closer to, as I have here, 84%. Okay. His yards per target, looking at his career yards per target each season. During his 2018 season, it was 7, 6.6, 5, and 9.6. I don't know if it's going to be 9.6. That seems like the outlier here. I think 7 is the safest yards per target number here, which gives him receiving yards 394 receiving yards. That would be second best in his career behind the 2018 season. But remember, in 2018, he only played 13 games. Well, for context, last season, James Conner, 375 receiving yards in 15 games. So I am docking him a little bit, but I still expect that James Conner is going to do pretty well. Now, receiving touchdowns, I need to put in a receiving touchdown rate. And looking over his career, James Conner has 192 targets and 7 receiving touchdowns. He had 3 receiving touchdowns last season. So I can expect that it's going to be pretty close to that 1 to 3 range. So let's put it in 7 divided by 192, and we'll see what we get if it's close to what we want. Yeah, so this is a little higher than 2 receiving touchdowns. That's fine for me. I'm okay with James Conner at 3.65 receiving touchdown rate. Remember, his rushing touchdown rate was over 5%. So I like that. All right. Now, what does this mean in the context for running backs? What would 233.7 half PPR fantasy points be last season? Okay. Half point PPR for running backs last season, 233 would put him at about running back 6. Assuming all things are good and he plays all 17 games, running back 6. Remember, James Conner in total half point PPR points last season was running back 5 with 239. He's going to replicate pretty close to last season based on what I have him projected for. Now, I may go in and do some adjustments if I see that Darrel Williams deserves more, or if I'm not getting enough rush share from Williams or Ingram or Ward or Benjamin, for instance. So we'll go from there. Now it's going to be this is the player I've been looking forward to projecting the most on this Arizona Cardinals offense because Darrell Williams was all but forgotten, but now he's risen up about 4 rounds in the best ball tournaments that you're probably playing in right now. So let's look at what Darrell Williams brings to the table. Darrell Williams was a rookie back in 2018. He's now on the Arizona Cardinals. He's played for the Kansas City Chiefs each of the last 4 seasons until he signed with the Cardinals in free agency. Okay. And Darrell Williams really took on a big role with the Clyde Edwards-Helaire injury, not injury, but surgery, I should say, because that was a storyline no one was listening to, was that Clyde Edwards-Helaire was coming back from pretty significant surgery. Let's look at how the Kansas City Chiefs used Darrell Williams because we need to know what kind of rush share we should project for Darrell Williams. And Williams played all 17 games. The median rush share for Darrell Williams was 25%. There were 2 games last season where Williams had 75% or more of the rushes. There were also 2 games where he had fewer than 10% of the rushes. I think 25 to 30% of the rushes is within the range of outcomes for him. Let's put in 25%. See where that takes us. That takes us to 123 rush attempts. 123. Now let's look at his yards per attempt rushing over the last few seasons. Darrel Williams, not very good. 3.8 is his career yards per attempt. His career high was 4.3. He had 3.9 last year. I think 3.9 or 3.85 would probably be the best estimate here. 3.85, 472 rushing yards. And his rushing touchdown rate. So that would be equal to, I'm just going to use the career rate, 10 rushing touchdowns over 237 rushes. And that would be a 4.2% rushing touchdown rate. 5 rushing touchdowns. This is not like a career high of what he was used last year, but it's still going to be fantasy useful. That's what I'm talking about. Darrel Williams could be extremely interesting because he's still going around 14, 15, 16 in your best ball lineups. And you're getting a player who could score 5 rushing touchdowns, almost 500 rushing yards if he plays all 17 games, and he's playing behind James Conner. Look, and I'm conservative with a 25% rush share. I could have bumped it up to 30. We even saw last year Darrel Williams 75 plus percent a couple weeks. I think 25% is conservative for the Arizona Cardinals. Now let's look at his target share. Darrel Williams' target share just last season. The median target share for Darrel Williams was 9%. 9%. Now, what kind of role is Darrel Williams going to have? Is he going to have the Chase Edmonds role? Well, maybe. Let's look at what Chase Edmonds did last year. His median target share. So this is Chase Edmonds' target share. Median target share would be about 14%. So he's not going to get the full Chase Edmonds role, but he's going to get 2/3 of it. He's going to get almost the same as James Conner. He very well may split receiving work with James Conner. That's interesting to me. I mean, the Cardinals don't bring in Darrel Williams to not use him. I know they didn't sign him for very much, but you don't need to. This is exactly what the Cardinals did last season with James Conner. They signed a veteran later on, and there was no hype about James Conner. If you remember last year, there was a lot of people in on Chase Edmonds saying, Chase Edmonds running back 1. Chase Edmonds going to be the lead back. No, it was James Conner who was getting all of the rushing work, and it was Chase Edmonds getting a lot of the receiving work. In fact, 10 of the 12 weeks that Chase Edmonds played, he had 10% target share or higher. In fact, 2 of the weeks, he had a 23% target share or higher. So I don't think it's out of the range of possibility that Darrel Williams can get a 9% target share along with a James Conner getting 9% target share as well. Because looking at what Conner and Edmonds were doing last year, like this could end up being a 20+% target share for the running backs for at least those top 2. And I'm projecting at 18. I feel like I'm being conservative, and we're still this high on Darrel Williams. Okay. The catch percentage career rate for Darrel Williams, 79%. After he started getting more involved, his 2019 year, 79%, 2020 was 69%, and last year was 82%. I think a fair catch percentage would probably be around 78% catch rate. His yards per target, a career 7.3. Okay, last season 7.9. He in little usage was 8.8 and 9. I don't value those sample sizes as much. And then 2020 was 4.5. I value the most recent one given the volume of work that Darrel Williams was getting and his career rate. So I think I'm going to split the difference between the last season and the career rate, probably 7.6, 7.6 as the yards per target. And so that gives Darrel Williams 427 receiving yards out of the backfield. Not bad. And then his receiving touchdowns, 2, out of however many targets, 105 career targets. So very low touchdown rate, probably only one touchdown, a 2% touchdown receiving touchdown rate. So probably Connor gets 13 total touchdowns. Darrel Williams gets six, but Darrel Williams 149 half PPR fantasy points. That would put Darrel Williams at running back 26 last season. This would get him to running back 26 if he played all 17 games. Wow. Wow. Now, I don't think that Darrel Williams should be running back 26. Like that's not what my projections are trying to communicate. What it is saying is that he's probably extremely undervalued for the role in which he's worked in the last few seasons and the gaping hole that Chase Edmonds left in this Arizona offense. Now, maybe I do some massaging in a little bit, but that's going to be about the range for Darrel Williams. Like that shouldn't be crazy for us, seeing the what offense the Arizona Cardinals like to run and utilize their running backs, and especially if James Conner is out, wheels up for Darrel Williams. He's one of my favorite zero RB build pieces. All right, Keontae Ingram. Uh, I'll probably throw about a 5% rush share in. I think that I'm just going to use a baseline of 4.2 yards per carry. That would get him, let's say, a 4% touchdown rate, and that would get maybe one touchdown on the season. 5% is a little high, maybe 2.5% for Keontae Ingram. I'm just spitballing these rookie running backs. Uh, the biggest ones I want to focus on are these first two running backs, and then I'll massage the rest of it based on what I see and what players we have here. Okay. So 16 targets, 13 receptions. I think an 80% catch rate should be fine. Yards per target, six should be okay. Less than 100 receiving yards shouldn't be crazy. And then receiving touchdowns, let's put it at a 2% rate, just so we're not outrageous. All right, Keontae Ingram at 34 half point PPR. That's not even in the top 50. So let's not get carried away here. Jonathan Ward, we do have some data on Jonathan Ward. So let's look at that. Jonathan Ward last season. Jonathan Ward. Yeah, so his target share, or let's start with the rush share. Let's start with the rush share last season. Uh, he topped out at an 11% rush share in one game. In fact, what Jonathan Ward played 13 games, and the majority of his games were 0% rush share. So looking at, like, I'll probably average his total rush shares. So 26 over the course of uh, 13 games. We're talking like a 2% rush share. So 1.8, I think that's fine. Uh, Looking at Jonathan Ward's career, he's just a perennial backup depth piece. So probably not going to be super meaningful, but I want to make sure I get something in there for Jonathan Ward. His yards per carry over his career 3.7, so I'll keep it at that. That gives him 33 rushing yards, no rushing touchdowns. uh yeah, he doesn't have a career rushing touchdown anyways. His target share over the course of the season uh ranged from 0 to 4%. So 1% target share just to hedge a little bit, fine, whatever. 80% catch rate. Uh, his yards per target, 9. Let's bump that down to like 7.5. Um, Receiving touchdown. He has one career receiving touchdown in 5 targets. So I'm uh, Whereas comparing to the other two, probably 2% is still fair. He probably got lucky there, so I'm not going to bank on that. Jonathan Ward even lower than Keontae Ingram because of the target share. Keontae Ingram still a camp body. A point 0.5 rush, 0.5% rush share for the last two, and I'm just going to uh, put in there. Nothing crazy. 4 and 4. That'll get us there. 1% 0.5% target share, and then I'll just draw it down. So nothing crazy is happening at that point. Also 2% for those. All right. So we got the camp bodies done. Last running back on the docket is Eno Benjamin, who did get a little bit of run at the end of last season. Benjamin, very late round Arizona Cardinal pick a couple years back. And his rush share in 9 games ranged from 0 to 30% rush share. Um, his median was 6% rush share, so I'll give him a 6.3 instead of 6.9 uh, rush share. His yards per carry. Once again, we're getting into very small samples, so the yards per carry isn't going to be a significant determining factor. Benjamin rookie year last year, at least the first time getting action. 3.5 is his career yards per carry. 3.6, we'll leave it there. That's fine. He has one career touchdown in 34 rushes. So probably, one rushing touchdown, not going to make much of a difference. And then the target share, his median target share last season was 0, but he had 4 games with one with 2, one with 3, one with 6, one with 10% target share. So adding those up, dividing by 9 or 10, 5, 11, 21, we're looking at a 2% target share. That's fine. Career receiving rate, 85%. That's fine. And no receiving touchdowns in his career. So maybe just a 2% rate once again, pretty low, not likely to happen there. Okay. And so, Benjamin, Keontae Ingram, probably interchangeable based on these projections. Now, this is where it gets a little bit interesting because, I mean, the most interesting part for me in this entire projection was Darrel Williams versus James Conner. But when it comes to the wide receivers, the most intriguing wide receiver, I think, is DeAndre Hopkins because he's coming off of one of his worst seasons of his career, nearly a career low in target share, but a player that, when he's been on the field, touchdown maker, big time player, and I love the career that DeAndre Hopkins has shown us. So let's get into it. DeAndre Hopkins should be healthy, but he's suspended for the first 6 games. So I will have to prorate prorate his target share. So that's going to be whatever his target share is times 11 divided by 17. Okay, so whatever that's going to be, whatever I determine it's going to have to be, that's what I'm going to include. So DeAndre Hopkins. Last season, DeAndre Hopkins target shares ranged from 6.3% target share all the way to 32% target share. So we did see a few games where Hopkins had elite target shares, but he's played 10 games and his median target share was 21%. Half of his games were 24 or higher, half of his games were 17 or lower. And that does include the one game where he played 25.4% of the game. But let's take that one out. Then the median is probably 24% target share. So let me do that. And so DeAndre Hopkins prorated target share over the course of the season is 16%. I estimated that it'd be 24%, but he's suspended 6 games, so I took out 6 games worth of target share from DeAndre Hopkins. Now, Hopkins, as I mentioned, touchdown maker in his career. Looking at his rushing, he's going to have like one rush attempt, maybe. He had one in 2020 for Arizona. He had none last year. Maybe he gets one. A 0.25% target share or rush share, nothing, whatever. 3 yards per carry. I don't care. That's a bunch of zeros. What I am concerned about for DeAndre Hopkins is the targets. So 97 targets and his career catch percentage 62%, but over the last 2 seasons in Arizona, 72 and 66. So splitting the difference is closer to like 69% catch rate. So let's put that in. Splitting the difference, 69% catch rate. His yards per target, each of the last 2 seasons, 8.8 and 8.9. His career is 8.3. So let's actually go with 8.8 because I'm comfortable bumping him up in a different offense compared to his career with Houston. Back in 2016, he had like 6.3 was the yards per target for Houston when he played 16 games, only had 954 receiving yards. So his receiving touchdown rate over the last 2 seasons, Hopkins has had 14 touchdowns over the course of 224 targets. So let's use that as the barometer. 14 divided by what did I say? 226 or 224 targets, and that is a rate of 6.25%. Not bad. So even over the course of the season, DeAndre Hopkins, 6 receiving touchdowns, 155.6 half point fantasy points. What is that? Where does that rank? We took out 6 games. Where does DeAndre Hopkins fall? 155.6 would still put him at wide receiver 29 last season. So maybe I am a little bit low on DeAndre Hopkins. Maybe I am a little low because I haven't been drafting a lot of Hopkins. This is changing my perspective a little bit in the Best Ball Mania 3 drafts, but also in the Drafters Fantasy. I may have to consider DeAndre Hopkins a little bit more. Maybe I'm too out on him. All right, let's get to Marquise Brown. We'll speed it up once we get to a lot of the zeros here with the Greg Dortches of the world and the Andre Bocellias. Also, I spent a lot of time at the beginning of this podcast talking about my philosophy and my view for projections and giving a little bit of background. But that's encouraging for DeAndre Hopkins, honestly, that he's still going to be, a mid wide receiver 3 despite missing those games for suspension, assuming he comes back with like that median. All right, let's talk about Marquise Brown because the Cardinals traded for Marquise Brown knowing that DeAndre Hopkins was going to be suspended. And Marquise Brown, I mean, he's a smaller wide receiver. He's definitely commanded a hefty target share during his 3 seasons in Baltimore. Okay. And looking at what Marquise Brown just did last year, he was hyper targeted. His median target rate in the games that he played was between 24.3 and 25.9% target rate. So we're talking a 25.1% target percentage, 25.1, and we're not expecting him to miss any games. 157 targets. That is massive. Holy guacamole. You love to see it. You absolutely love to see that from Marquise Brown. Now, he had one rush each of the last 2 seasons. Once again, I couldn't give 2 flying cares about Marquise Brown's rushing rate. There are some wide receivers I care about, not Marquise Brown. Marquise Brown's catch rate over the last few seasons, 64.8 his rookie year, 58 his second year, 62.3 his most recent years, career rate 61.5. I think 61.5 is a little low. So I think 62.5 would probably be better catch rate, and that'll bump up his yards. 1,300 receiving yards for Marquise Brown. His yards per target, 7.4. So that's his career. And he last year he had 6.9, 2020, 7.7. All right. So 7.4, I think, is just fine. That'll get him down to 1160 receiving yards. So he's going to have almost 100 receptions, over 1100 receiving yards. His touchdown rate over his career, Marquise Brown, 21 career touchdowns in 317 career targets. And we'll compare that to what we have for DeAndre Hopkins, which is pretty close, 6.25, 6.62. With Hopkins being out, it wouldn't surprise me if Marquise Brown gets to that double-digit receiving touchdown number. Okay. 227.75 half PPR wide receiver points. That would put Marquise Brown last season as wide receiver 8. It would be ahead of last season's Mike Evans, ahead of last season's Deontay Johnson. This is total points, though. So, Mike Evans only played 16 games. Deontay Johnson only played 16 games. Mike Williams only played 16 games. But this definitely puts Marquise Brown in this top 12 median projection conversation. If he can have a 25% target share, that's interesting. We'll see if it sticks, though. I may have to massage that down if I go through the rest of the projections and say, you know what, these are not lining up. Okay, because right now I'm at 159% target rate, and I need to get that down to 100. So as I said at the beginning of the podcast, this is a study hall where I do learning and processing, and I make those judgment calls based on the projections. So I know the restraints, and I'll make adjustments after those restraints. But 25% target share, that's pretty darn sinking nice. If Marquise Brown can get there, he could be a value because an underdog, he's not. He's below top 12. Okay, let's look at Rondell Moore. Rondell Moore. Rookie last season, extremely undersized, was not used a lot down the field. And why did that delete? I don't want it to delete. Rondell Moore, over the course of 2021, his median target share, he played 14 games. So his median target share was between 14.3 and 13.8. So a 14.1% target share for Rondell Moore should be just fine. Okay. And getting Rondell Moore some rushes. This is a wide receiver that I do care about getting rushes because they're going to scheme him touches in this offense. And last season in 14 games, he had 18 rushes. And looking at Rondell Moore, his rush share, median rush share, I said he played 14 games, was about 4.9%. So 4.9. Let's do it. 24 rush attempts, 101 rushing yards. His yards per attempt rushing was 4.2, so that's fine. Didn't have any rushing touchdowns. Touchdown rate, I think that should be at like 1.5% for the rest of these beloveds. So let's do it. 1.5 for those that I don't care about. Okay. Yeah. Okay. 1.5% just to have something there, I suppose. Not gonna shift the needle significantly at all. But a 14% target share is nothing to scoff at for Rondell Moore. 88 targets. He had an 84.4 catch rate because his yards per target 6.8, but his yards after the catch were what did it. He was catching most of his passes close to the line of scrimmage. 599 receiving yards, and his touchdown, he had one touchdown and 64 targets. I anticipate that that's going to be a little bit higher. That's like a 2% rate. I'll think that he gets closer to a 3% rate. And that would get him to 3 touchdowns. Okay. 125.2 half PPR points. That would put Rondell Moore at about wide receiver 45, wide receiver 44 from last year. That's around the AJ Green, Marquez Callaway, Cedric Wilson uh, level from last season. Okay. So still not like going to move the needle significantly, but Rondell Moore going to put up 125 half PPR points. AJ Green just signed about a month ago. I love AJ Green now. I was really out on him before, but I'm glad to see that he's had kind of a career renaissance here in his most recent season in Arizona. Green was such a dominant player in Cincinnati, and it's a shame that he went through a stretch where he was not valuable at all. AJ Green played 16 games, stayed pretty much healthy all season, and in his median outcome was 17.4% target share in the games he played. 17.4. Holy guacamole. And if he does play, he might be the most significant beneficiary of DeAndre Hopkins being out. You could definitely see AJ Green on one side. You could see DeAndre Hopkins or Marquise Brown on the other side, and then Rondell Moore in the slot. That could be the first 6 games for the Arizona Cardinals, and the Cardinals have a pretty nice start of season schedule. Okay. So AJ Green will not have an 84% catch rate. That's just not part of his game. His career rate is closer to 57.5. And last season was 58. So I think 58 is going to be a pretty safe bet there. And that did bring us pretty significantly down. 70%. We're getting lower and lower here. His yards per target last season, 9.4 yards per target. His career is 8.4. So I'm going to probably pick about 8.7. I think that that's fair. 8.5 probably. Okay, so 8.5 and receiving yards 924. His touchdown rate last season, AJ Green had 3 touchdowns in 92 targets. So 3 out of 92. It should be a little bit higher than Rondell Moore's. So probably, 3.26. That will get him to the closer to 4 touchdowns, 155.5 half PPR fantasy points. That would put him once again at wide receiver 28 or so. Um, uh, Around the same as DeAndre Hopkins, even though Hopkins will play 6 fewer games than AJ Green. They're projected to have about the same output. That's interesting to me. AJ Green's rush attempts, no, he's not going to be doing much rushing. In fact, AJ Green has not rushed the ball since 2014 when he was 26 years old. So no, we're going to put a a singular one right there, and just a hedge. But yeah, that's not going to move anything for okay, 145. Thanks for catching that, Bradley. 145 would put him closer to like the Jacoby Myers of the world. Fine. Okay. But AJ Green, I mean, looking at what where he is going on underdog, got to be a value. Um, I'm just looking really quickly at uh, Green. AJ Green is wide receiver 81 on underdog right now, 186th in ADP. So I think that he has the potential to outscore that significantly. Rondell Moore, he might jump up a little bit, but you have to be at least eyebrow raising that AJ Green got lots of targets last season in this Arizona offense. All right, Andy Isabella, uh, a what a 0.3% target share. That's fine. Greg Dortch, a 0.3% target share. That's fine. I don't really care about his 100% career catch rate. That's not going to do anything. Um, nor the touchdown rate. Yeah. Greg Dortch, neither. Okay. Yeah. So let's skip all the way to Antoine Wesley because he came on a little bit hot at the end of last season. Let's look at Wesley. Okay. So Antoine Wesley, his target share, this is interesting. He played 15 games and his median target share was about 6.2%. Now, in the games he didn't play, in the games he didn't play, it was straight, like almost zero. Like there were in games that he needed to register more than 25% snaps to get a target share at all. So I think it's going to be closer to like a 3% target share. Um, we know that DeAndre Hopkins is going to be out for a while, but Marquise Brown is going to gobble up a lot of that. AJ Green is going to gobble up a lot of that. Rondell Moore is going to get some. I think it's fair to fade Wesley with the arrival of Marquise Brown. And I know that there are some who are like, "Oh, Antoine Wesley played really well." I mean, he did, but Antoine Wesley is also it was his first year last year, 6'4", 206, an undersized outside wide receiver, career catch rate 59.4%. He did have 3 touchdowns on 32 targets, so that was interesting to me. It's 3 divided by 32. Okay, and that might get him 2 touchdowns at that rate, um, but still not going to move the needle at all, okay, for Antoine Wesley. We do need to cut down a lot of the target shares, so that's gonna be, what we'll need to do once we start getting into the like, for instance, Christian Blake here. We'll be able to get rid of some of the Christian Blake target share. Because last season, looking at Christian Blake's target shares, he played, uh 16 games, and only 7 of those 16 games he registered a target share. So looking at the rest of it, 12, 16, 22, 25, 27 over the course of 15 games, like a 1.5% target share might be fair for Christian Blake. Okay. And as I mentioned, Christian Blake, he's not going to be getting much here. I'm just uh, he's definitely like a tier 4 player, Christian Blake. He's definitely a tier 4 wide receiver, not gonna be doing much. Coming over from Atlanta, fourth year in the NFL, a career 55% catch rate. Not going to do much. Okay. Receiving touchdown rate, he has 0 touchdowns, so I think a 3% rate is fair, and that will definitely cut down on the touchdowns. Right now, I have, Kyler Murray projected for, 10,000 touchdowns, so that will definitely adjust. That will definitely adjust. Bachelia, not gonna do it. I have nothing for Bachelia, nothing for Kirkland either, Javonta Payton, Jared Smart. These are all camp bodies. I expect most of them to get cut. I'd be surprised if more than one of them emerges, especially given all the wide receivers that the Arizona Cardinals have. Now let's finish it up. We are over an hour into the projections, and I need to finish up the tight ends and then do some massaging. Okay. So Zach Ertz, let's look at what was happening with Zach Ertz last year. Okay. Because Zach Ertz was getting a pretty hefty workload and a nice target share pretty consistently since the trade. But last season, Zach Ertz's median target share was about, let's say he played 17 games. So his median target share was like 18.8. Okay. So that is not 19.3, 18.8. We'll drop that down a little bit. And then his catch rate, Zach Ertz's catch rate. Oh, he did get one rush attempt. So like 0.25. Let's just throw that in there. 0.25%. Okay. One rush attempt, 4 yards per carry. I don't care. 1, 3. I don't give two hoots. If you're watching here and you're being critical of that, the minutia there, fine, whatever. His catch percentage over the last few seasons, his career is 67%, which is what I have here. But last season in Arizona, 69%. When it was with Philadelphia in 2019, it was 58%, and in 2020 it was 50%. So he definitely experienced some sort of a renaissance there. I think it's going to be closer to 66%. His yards per target for Arizona was 7.1. His career is 7.2. So I think 7.2 is going to be just fine. The receiving yards, that's interesting to me. 846 receiving yards. His career touchdown, 41 touchdowns in 949 targets. So not going to be much of a touchdown baker, which is fair. 4.32 rate, 5 touchdowns, and 154.15 half PPR points. Where would that rank last season? 154 would put him at tight end 5 if he played all 17 games. But Rob Gronkowski had 143 in 12 games. George Kittle had 162 in 14 games. Ertz last season was he had 143, but he did that in 17 games. So I think increased efficiency on the Arizona Cardinals with a uh, tempered target share. I'm gonna probably have to knock down his target share, him and Marquise Brown and a few others, because I'm at 152% target share. But yeah, I'm excited about that. Okay, let's look at Trey McBride. I'm going to give McBride a 4% target share. I think that's fair for a rookie season, 180, and a similar touchdown rate to Ertz. He'll have a touchdown on the season. That's fine. McBride's not going to make a difference. Steven Anderson. I think Steven Anderson had a spike week or two, but Steven Anderson, he's played since 2016. And Anderson is not going to be playing significant significant snaps for the Arizona Cardinals. Let's just be real about that. Last season, he played for the LA Chargers, and Steven Anderson's, let's see, he played all 17 games, and his median target share was 3%. So 3%, and bring down those yards per target. That's fine. That's pretty comparable, and less than one. So he'll operate rotating in probably with Trey McBride. Anderson, I believe, is um, the pass blocking tight end, but maybe Ertz and McBride, because Ertz is not a good pass blocker at all. Maybe McBride can step up into that role. Uh, Max Williams, I don't even know what Max Williams is going to be for this coming year. I'm going to give him a 2% target share, but oh boy, he was putting up Zach Ertz numbers before the ACL tear. But I don't know if Max Williams is going to be able to get there. Maybe a 1% share is going to be even too much here. Deion Yelder, 0.5% target share. Pierce and Wells can be zeros. That's fine. And I'll just drop down the target shares or the touchdown rates as well here. Okay. Now that we have our touchdown rates all set, at least this will give us barometer. 36 passing touchdowns for Kyler Murray, but target shares are still too high. In fact, I'm at 129% target share. It's too high. Something's got to give. And it's got to come out of the backfield. You got to think that's going to be part of it. That's 18 plus 3. The way I see it, though, is generally speaking, 60 go to the wide receivers, 20 go to the running backs, 20 go to the tight ends. And we're at maybe I bump Keontae Ingram down to 2%. They shouldn't even be getting. They should be at 0. Both Ronnie Rivers and there we go, 1.5. I'm gonna chip away at that. So that'll put us at like what 22.5% target share for the running back, which I feel is fair. That's fine. Okay. And Yelder 0.5. We're still needing to chip away 27% of the targets. Okay. Yeah. Where are we going to pull them from? I mean, it's got to be Ertz, right? He's got to go down to like 16%. That's got to hurt a little bit, hurt the Ertz. AJ Green probably goes down to 15%. I mean, we're chipping away pretty significant. Marquise Brown, 23%. DeAndre Hopkins, I mean, maybe we make that now 22% that we're taking away from. Now I'm able to get it down to 118%. But boy, oh boy, that's really hard to get to. Oh man, because you don't want to chip away too much more. Darrel Williams, maybe I'm too high on him. James Conner, let's make that 8 and 7. Okay. As I said, this is an art, not a science, but there are some parameters that I need to reach for these projections to make a little bit of sense. Okay. And then I'll do one final look through in comparison of the major players. Okay. Once I'm all done massaging these. Okay. All right. I'm still needing 15%, 0.5%. Max Williams, I don't even know if he makes the team. Steven Anderson, 1.5%. Oh, that's going to mess up things. Hey, Trey McBride, maybe that's more like 3.5%. Zach Ertz, 15.5. Blake's already at 1.5. Maybe Wesley goes back down to 2.5%, especially if he's not rotating in. That could be problematic. We can make that like 7.5. Um, I don't want to take too much more away from it. That would be 3, 4, 5. Yeah, that's about 14 and a half, 15. That would get me to the 20 that I need. And then looking at the wide receivers, I'm at 71. I really need to cut down. Who does this hurt the most? That's a big question. Who does Marquise Brown stepping in hurt the most? It has to be AJ Green, yeah? It has to be AJ Green. Probably bump him down to 13%. Rondell Moore, 13%. We're able to get down to 108. Oh, this is tough. This is really tough. DeAndre Hopkins, let's see if 21%. That's still 108. As I mentioned, this is really difficult to do. Maybe I have to give all the way down to 20% down for Marquise Brown. This could get uglier. Like I was much more in on Marquise Brown before we started seeing that I now need to chip away at almost everybody. Okay, to maintain the uh, comparable uh, percent target share. So now I'm at 103. Okay, 22%. I should be able to take away, make that 1%. So that's 0.5, 0.5, 1, 2. I'm gonna have to drop down Zach Ertz. 1, 2, 6, 14%. Okay, 101. I'm extremely close. Can I pick off anything else? Oh, it's so hard to do because I've already chipped away so much. 19.5. No, I'd rather take away from AJ Green. Okay. Did I get there? Okay, so 625 targets. And the 624.5, 625 pass attempts. We are there. Now I need to massage the rushing shares. Benjamin, that one I don't need to massage so much because I'm only 18.3% above. Zach Ertz can be 0. That's fine. Dortch at 0. Andy Isabella at 0. AJ Green at 0. Okay, that's ridiculous. We'll keep Rondell Moore at 5 or 4.9. Marquise Brown at 0.25. DeAndre Hopkins, I can safely bump down to 0. Where are we at? 112.3. Okay, good. Good. 4.5 for Benjamin. Ronnie Rivers, that's a 0. TJ Pledger, that's a 0. Now we're down to 109.5. Excellent. Let's drop Keontae Ingram down 4.5. Let's drop down Darrel Williams to 22.5. Okay. That gets me down to 106.5. Dropping down Kyler Murray to 19.5. Colt McCoy and Trace McSorley to 0. And we're down to 103.2. Okay, good. And 42.5 for James Conner. 100.7. Now I just need to chip away a little bit more. I mean, 3.8. What's the difference going to make there? Nothing. 100%. Good. All right. So that's going to be pretty darn sinking close to what I want on that front. The only other part that I need to massage here is the catch rate. So I need to get that down to about 67%. And the big ones to take away from here, 67%. Dortch, that doesn't matter. But the big ticket players, 3.5%. That's going to be more like 77.5%. Okay. Rondell Moore, let's say it gets down. Let's say it gets down to like 77% because of the average of the target increasing. Okay. DeAndre Hopkins, 67%. Marquise Brown, I think 63% is fair. Let's say 57.5% for AJ Green. Right, we're at 68% right now. And Darrel Williams, brought that down to 75%. See if we get there. Not yet. Okay. Same thing with Deontay Ingram, 75%. Get there? Not yet. 75%. And Benjamin, 75%. Still not there. We're inching close. 76.5%. Rondell Moore. Nope, that did not get us there. Okay, 66.5% for DeAndre Hopkins. Did not get us there. 65.5 for Zach Ertz. Actually, we can bump down Ertz, I think, a little bit more because of the inefficiency he had over the last couple seasons with Philadelphia. Right, we are at 67%. Now, with all that being said, I've put in the rush shares, I put in the target shares, I've done all of the rates. It's now taken me about 80 minutes to go through these projections and let me do some comps for you. Okay, so Kyler Murray last season, let me pull up the quarterback in 4-point passing touchdown leagues, 359.6. That would put him at quarterback 5 behind Mahomes, Brady, Herbert, and Allen. Not too bad. For running backs, James Conner, my projection of 212 would put him at running back 8. And that would have been last year behind Fournette, Elliott, James Conner's 2021 season, Najee Harris, Joe Mixon, Austin Eckler, Jonathan Taylor. So Connor's in for another big year, even without a 50% rush share. Darrel Williams, 125.09 half point. What did I say? 125. That would be about running back 32, 33, which would have been the Devontae Booker's, Chuba Hubbard's, Chase Edmonds of last year. So I think he does take on the Chase Edmonds role, but to a lesser extent. So a lower target share, a few more rush attempts. Let's see. Keontae Ingram won't be useful. Let's go all the way to DeAndre Hopkins. I did have to chip away a lot at Hopkins and the rest of this wide receiver core, but I think Hopkins does take a hit. 134.77 would get him to wide receiver 38 last season, and that is still ahead of Russell Gage. It's ahead of Tim Patrick. And it's ahead of what DeAndre Hopkins did last year in 10 games. So 134.77 half points, still a useful piece for you in fantasy. I don't think fading DeAndre Hopkins completely is the right choice. Marquise Brown, I was super bullish when I started into this, and then I had to chip away. Marquise Brown, I have projected for 181 PPR or half PPR fantasy points, that would put him at wide receiver 23, which is exactly where he finished last year. Marquise Brown finished wide receiver 23 on 145 targets, but he should increase efficiency and touchdown rate this season, given that he's on a better offense. So it balances out. Essentially, what I'm saying is Marquise Brown is appropriately priced if he's being drafted at about wide receiver 23 or so. Rondell Moore, 105.4. He's not even in the top 50 now. Same thing with AJ Green, not in the top 50. I think, they take hits in their usage. The rest of the wide receivers, as I mentioned, not useful at all. But Zach Ertz, the last piece that I want to bring to your attention, 113.64 projected PPR or half PPR points. That's not good. That's not going to get it done. That's tight end 15, 16 numbers from last season. Zach Ertz last season, 143 half PPR points, tied for tight end 5. I think that he's going to be a fade, with Trey McBride even taking 4% of the targets. Losing 15 to 20 targets to Trey McBride, that would be a problem this year. And it's possible that by the end of the season, you see McBride get 2 or 3 targets a game by the last few games. So that could be problematic for Zach Ertz. Zach Ertz probably a season-long play compared to one of those week 17 matchups that you're trying to target. If you liked what I did here on the projections and you liked my thought process and you liked what I went through to describe the players and give comps for where they would have been last year, if you liked all of that, give a subscribe on the YouTube channel, give the likes. I love the comments, especially after the videos, love interacting. And also check out the audio on the YouTube channel. Give a like and subscribe there. Give the 5 stars. My wife loves seeing those 5 stars pop up on the podcast. Happy wife, happy life. I want to thank everyone for tuning in to the Best Ball Fantasy YouTube and live stream, where I did today the Arizona Cardinals projections. Coming up this week, I'm going to do some more projections, and then I'll also do some rankings based on the best ball positional rankings, and also the tournaments. In the meantime, if you want to reach out, you can reach me on Twitter at FFStalder. Make sure to subscribe, like all the places. And in the meantime, good luck in the best ball streets.